We as women, we already have this hormonal cycle that works like this, you know? Hats off to these women and hats off to you for starting this.
And yourself.
What gets sacrificed? Like if you're doing 10 things outdoors, 3 roles at your own house, and then you have relatives to see, your kids.
You know, if they've done their homework, if they need any printouts for the next day, you know, what uniform needs to be worn from this generation. We've also learned to be like, we want to do so much. I think that you need to prioritize.
What motivated you? And then what is that, you know, vision statement?
I just remember this one statement, you know, from my husband, and he's like, you know, your heart is not into it. You know, tum chhod do, tumne nahi karna ye. Because I'd never run a sports club before. I was like, I'm all in. You know, the space that we looked at, I'll come back and I'll throw my, 100% in, and we'll see how it works out. Some skills from here, some skills from there. You learn so much from the people you meet, because writing does not make enough money, you know.
Welcome to the show. We are on the 4C podcast. Today we're joined by Safina Danish Elahi, who is an entrepreneur, author, and someone who has been in the field of publishing. So we're going to learn a lot from her. So I'm pretty excited for this episode. So Safina, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Aisha. I was so glad when you messaged me. I was like, okay, this is the chance to reconnect with a friend.
Yeah,
I think that, I consider you that. So it was just like, okay, we're just going to chat. And the camera will be on, so this is just a normal chat for me.
I mean, I think conversations that are not planned, they are the best ones. I mean, I could sit down and write an entire flow of a conversation.
Of course.
But if it goes exactly like that, there's no fun. So I'm really excited. I know, Safina, you've been doing some phenomenal stuff. You as a main person, I've seen your writings. I've read your book that you shared with me last time, and then seeing your journey into entrepreneurship.
Yes.
So speak to me about this transition, because I really want to start with this and then move to the other elements that makes you who you are.
Of course. So I think that the last time we spoke, I was very actively writing and publishing, and I still am writing. Like I mentioned, that this book that I'd written 2 years ago, the process of publishing and writing is very long. So one book, takes minimum of 3 years, because you first write it, then you kind of, shop for a publisher, you submit it to many places, you try to find an agent. So finally, when I did find an agent, I did find a publisher, then there are multiple rounds of editing that goes on.
God, yes.
Because nobody's work is perfect, or, obviously. So right now, I'm in my second phase of editing. And like you mentioned, I kind of transitioned into entrepreneurship, which is my own paddle club. I'm a co-founder with my partner Jafar Hashim, and it's called Paddleverse. So life kind of took, like a 180 degrees, I think about 9 months ago when we opened. So I have a paddle athlete hat, a business owner hat, and then a writer hat.
Yeah.
And then I'd say like even a mom hat, because I have 2 children as well.
Yeah.
So that requires like a lot of
shift of roles,
multitasking.
all day, all throughout the month. I mean, we as women, I say that a lot, that we as women, we already have this hormonal cycle that works like this,
Seriously.
And then if you're doing like 5 things, I think hats off to these women and hats off to you for starting this.
And yourself, because you do amazing things whenever I see, because I feel like a lot of life has just become online now. So
Yes.
I appreciate, I don't follow a lot of people, but, people who inspire me, I make it a point to see what they're doing. And I think your journey has always inspired me as well. But yes, you're so right that, women have to kind of take one hat off and, wear the other hat, and also kind of coordinate your entire day, show up as a daughter, as a wife, mother, like whatever role you're kind of filling. So there's a lot going on. Obviously, so do men, but I just think that with women, it's
more so.
It's a little bit more. And also, I think that, us from this generation, we've also learned to be like, we want to do so much,
Yes.
So I think that even our appetite has become very large. It maybe the generation before us, our mothers and maybe their mothers, they're very happy, having one role, being the support, emotional support, and running the household and doing that really well. And that, I mean, I find nothing wrong with that, absolutely. But our generation has a larger appetite. So I think we want to do so much more. And in that process, I feel like, I hope we're able to also look after ourselves, protect our mental health, our physical health. I mean, whenever I feel like, doctor ke paas jana hai, I'm just like, no, I'm fine. You know, like I don't need to kind of put time there because there's so many other things to do.
You could do that. But you spoke about multitasking, right? And that's so true. I really want you to speak about this, and I think it's interesting that you said it, because I think even when we're multitasking, and this is the appetite of this time that we're living in, I think something does get sacrificed along the way. So speak to me about that. What gets sacrificed? Like if you're doing 10 things outdoors, 3 roles at your own house, and then you have relatives to see, your kids, and what they're going through in school. So at the end of the day, if you sit and reflect, then what is being lost in the process?
I think that firstly, whoever is multitasking, you know, whoever is playing like, you know, more than, I don't know, 2 roles or 3 roles or whatever it is that your, you know, kind of your plate is holding, I think that you need to prioritize. You need to have your top 3, 4, 5 things that you need to do every day. For me, it's also how much time and effort I put in people. Right. So maybe I had a large social circle before, but now it's literally people on my fingers that, you know, like that I show up for. I also have a lot of conversations with myself, and I think that who am I the primary caretaker for? You know, my children, my parents, my husband's parents, because they also live next door. So, you know, like where am I demanded? And then there are 3, 4, 5 friends that I will always show up for. You know, if they need me, I'll be like, okay, I'm there. But what about the friends who are kind of in the periphery, in the outer circle? Like there's a networking event, there's a, I don't know, dinner party or something going on, birthday even. So there are some days now where, you know, they invite me, and I think to myself, I'm at home at 8 p.m. exhausted from all day of work. You know, I want to give my kids time because I can't just leave out of the, you know, I can't leave the house after I've come in at 8 p.m., not eaten. Am I okay to step out for a birthday? True. You know, so that's what gets lost. You know, I will probably say no to that.
But I think these are the good things to get lost, because if your family is getting disturbed within this process, then, you know, at the end of the day, who is suffering? You and your family.
Because, you know,
right?
my kids are looking forward for me to come back home. They do come, you know, and meet me at Paddleverse. They play a game. But at the end of the day, I need to check, you know, if they've done their homework, if they need any printouts for the next day, you know, what uniform needs to be worn, what driver needs to, you know, where does he need to pick my kids up from? They have classes. They have so much going on, right? So yes, then some of that gets compromised, which I'm okay with, by the way, because at the end of the day, you don't need 100 friends. You need to be cordial and, you know, civil with people, and you need to treat people with respect. But I don't think you need to kind of show up for 100 people, you know.
100%.
So that gets a little compromised. One thing that is kind of like a sensitive thing for me is my gym. And I feel like when I had more time, I would go to the gym 5 times a week, and now I have gym classes. I've moved gym to Paddleverse so that it's easier to do. That's twice a week, and then I play paddle, you know, 4 times a week. So exercise is happening, but there was a certain routine I used to follow, you know, in terms of my weight training and everything. That has gotten a little bit compromised as well. God, so, you know, it's like, where do you choose yourself and where do you choose
work?
You
have to choose that sweet balance at the end of the day. But, you know, this transition to Paddleverse, what motivated you? And then what is that, you know, vision statement, if I say it that way, that actually you were like, this needs to happen because no one else is doing. So what was that story?
So Paddleverse actually happened at a time where I had just gotten done with my master's, and I did my master's in writing, which is my basically core job. You know, I was publishing. I founded Reverie Publishers at the time that we met before. So I was publishing other people's work. My own work was being published abroad, you know, in the UK, my book was published. And I'd done this, you know, I just finished this. And so I felt like I was ready for a new role. So a leading newspaper, you know, there was a sort of like an empty, you know, job space that I thought I would maybe apply for. Then a university had reached out and they said a creative writing program. So, you know, like a professorship.
Yes.
So between this, I had a friend, I have a friend who kind of just, I met for coffee, and he's like, have you played paddle? And I was like, yes, I'm playing, and I think it's a really fun sport. And at that time, paddle had just come into, Pakistan. So there weren't a lot of courts. But I was like, it's like a really fun sport.
It's an upcoming thing.
It's an upcoming thing. And he's like, what do you think about opening a paddle club? And I was like, sure, I'm into it because I feel like I have, मैंने एक degree कर ली है. Now I have some time.
Yeah.
I could do something relevant, like in writing, or I can, because I have a business background as well. So I can also do that. And he searched around for a few spaces. Nothing was working out. And I just remember this one statement, from my husband. And he's like, your heart is not into it. तुम छोड़ दो, तुमने नहीं करना ये. And I was on a flight to Boston for my graduation. And I messaged my friend, the one who had reached out, Jafar, that I was like, I'm all in. The space that we looked at, I'll come back and I'll throw my, 100% in, and we'll see how it works out. Because obviously for any business, you need to finalize the space, designer, like what steps are needed, then investors, then how to kind of, work the system, like what tech is needed.
Exactly.
Like you don't really know, because I'd never run a sports club before. So there was a lot of learning to do as well.
So there was like a whole team of investors and other people, like board of directors, or were you the one making decisions?
No, so it was just me and my partner. And then we had some people on board. Some of it was debt, some of it was investment, some of it we just got interest from so many people that, okay, first sort of indoor air-conditioned space it was going to be Pakistan, but now there's, one in Lahore as well. So we're the only one in Karachi that is indoor and it's fully air-conditioned.
And what was the initial response that you got versus how the audience is reacting today? Because my understanding is that, of course, when you're bringing something new, even you were a bit, in doubt that perhaps this thing is not going to work, but because you had the passion, you were like, let's just go for it. Because if you think too much, then, you won't even do
No, of course. And I think it definitely was passion driven. And what I think our concern was that Paddleverse is in Korangi. So our initial concern was that, it's not Defence Clifton. Like how are people going to react? Because paddle is played by a certain,
I was going
class.
to say that.
Yeah. So a certain income, household would be able to afford to play paddle, right? So we were just thinking Korangi is off center. How do we get people to come to Korangi? Is that going to be a hang up? And then I think through like my network, through my partner, my husband, like our friends, their network. And then at the end of the day, Aisha, I feel like the core product is important. For a good thing, people will drive like that extra 5-8 minutes or 10 minutes to go to a place which is secure, safe, good quality courts. The best players come and, play with us. We've got social zones inside. We've got like a family environment. So Karachi ke log, they're starving for such things.
And if you're bringing true value to whatever business that you're doing, I think people do find you, in their own way.
Exactly. So now, alhamdulillah, like you asked, versus the first month to, we're sitting on month like 10 right now. So almost a year since, we started. I think that in any like active person who kind of plays, sport or paddle, they know about Paddleverse. And they know because there's quality courts there. If the courts weren't nice, and no matter how much I try to sell my service to you, you'll be like, but the core product isn't good. Why would I try it? And why would I throw my money at it, right? So we need to kind of, as business owners realize that firstly, your product/service needs to be top notch. What are you selling? How are you different? There are so many paddle courts in the country now, right? How are you going to survive?
Yeah.
How do you stand apart? And what if like 30 other courts open up? Will people still come to you? Are you good enough?
Yeah.
Have you built a routine? Have you built a habit? Are you offering something that the other people are not offering? And only then will you kind of sustain the demand for your service and your product.
Because I feel like the initial attention that any business gets, I think that's more so for the hype. Something is new, people want to try. But in order to keep that, as you said, the only thing that can bring a customer again, a paying customer again, is something that brings value beyond that, value beyond your competitors and stuff. And I think you've rightly said that. And that's why I want to come to the next question, which is, because you have this understanding, I think this requires research at many levels. This requires for you to wear a hat that is almost like, you on the laptop and you're actually searching 10 other things. Okay, what are these people doing? What is missing in Karachi? So speak to me about that process, and how important is this process before you actually jump to saying that, okay, let's start this thing, and you are my co-founder, right? And we'll come to that. How do you choose your team and everything?
Yeah. So basically, I think that what was important was that before we started as well, like, I took coaching. I went to clubs in Dubai. I checked out, because there was no paddle club in Karachi.
So you were checking indoors. Them in Dubai.
So we checked out, clubs in Dubai. Then I did a paddle camp in Spain. I saw that, like, how do academies work there? How are paddle clubs working there? So, and within, like, even Karachi, new paddle clubs were coming up. So we did a little bit of research there. And plus, like, with my writing career, I kind of knew that, that
so it came
industry.
Handy, right?
Yeah, like, I knew that industry, and then, like, this was completely different.
Yes.
So some skills I obviously used, but again, it's a whole new world.
It is.
And, like, when we were talking about multitasking, you were also asking me, like, Safina, then, like, what's going on about your writing? And so yeah, like, my next book comes inshallah out in January 2026. And that's also a very interesting concept. And I think that the reason I wrote that was also because of, the friendships that we were talking about. And that book is about 4 friends who kind of are very in each other's lives. They're very active. And then suddenly life happens. Like, somebody is getting married, somebody moves away, something happens, and they can't be there for each other. They can't show up in each other's lives. So I feel like, these 2 different worlds I'm living in right now, in which I'm in the writing world, and then it's the, the business, the sort of athletic circle. But you know what? I feel that all of it is complementary. Some skills from here, some skills from there. You learn so much from the people you meet.
Of course.
So I feel like a lot of people say, oh, where's your inspiration? And I'm like, my inspiration is people I meet.
Yeah.
And my style of writing is also like caricatures, right? Like, it's about people rather than me describing, like, fancy, like, situations and, like, some aesthetics of some, place.
I think this also brings rawness to writing, and one can tell. I mean, now, because I've read so much, although I'm a reader of non-fiction more so, because I've read fiction less.
Yeah.
I've seen more films, but less fiction.
Of course.
But, one can tell.
But any art form, right? Like, you're an artist, so
you can tell whether how much of this is, like, truth manipulated, used to the advantage. If you research the person enough, whether it's your own ideal, some artist, in my case, you can tell at some point, because if you've seen their journey, and now people and our lives are so public. I mean, we like posting even a slight inspiration that we get. And we have this urge. I mean, I get this urge that I'm thinking something new. And, sometimes I have to control myself.
Of course.
You don't have to put this out. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think this is quite interesting. And sometimes I think this brings us a lot of advantage that we are having multiple hats.
Of course.
See, like, writing is going to take you time anyway.
Of course.
Right? You're not going to come up with a book in next 2 months.
It's
going to take you time. You're going to write, you're going to rewrite, you're going to create a manuscript, and then in 3 months you're going to come back to it and read with a fresh mind before you go to that process.
Of course.
So I think this is so important, and I want Safina, you to speak more about this thing, that why this multitasking and this process of you going back to books, connecting with your author-related audience and your network, because I know you do publish writers too,
yes.
which is not so regular, but you do it. So how do you then switch, and how does this help you helps you to keep engaged your audience
in different audiences,
because you have different networks now?
Definitely. I Aisha, when I started writing, I was in awe of all the people around me, because writers that I interacted with were all such intelligent people, you know, because they've read for years in their lives, whether non-fiction or fiction. And I mean, if you looked at their like CVs and what colleges and universities and like seminars and residencies they'd attended,
You get intimidated.
you know, I was just like, oh my God, who am I even? You know, proper imposter syndrome. Like, I was like, what am I doing here? You know? But when you speak to them, you know, these people, you're also so inspired of their journeys and the way they write. I mean, this one writer who was also, and we were going to, speak about the residency as well. So he was part of the residency the 1 year before me. His name's Shehan Karunatilaka. He's a Sri Lankan writer who's also the Booker Prize winner.
Okay.
So I met him and I actually interviewed him at the Karachi Literature Festival.
Right.
And, you know, just being around him and other writers who were there, I just found it so inspirational. So, you know, like when you meet so many different people from so many different circles, I think that like you just learn so much from them. You know, how they conduct themselves. And then when they meet people from the business community. So I also, I remember at the time I was hosting dinners. So I don't know if I should name the writer, but he's a good friend of mine, and he was talking to somebody who runs a business, and he's like, I don't understand how you run a business, and he'd written like 3 very successful books, and he's like, I'm in awe of businessmen, and the guy goes like, I'm in awe of writers, you know, like, how do you guys do it? And he's like, how do you guys do it? You know, because it's different and it requires different skills.
It does.
But if you can do both, that's also a really fun mixture of, you know, like...
It's the best of both worlds. Like, come on, you get to have your own space where you get to explore your own mind, what intrigues you, what doesn't, and, you know, what just gets to you. You get to, you know, verbalize a lot of your emotions. But then there's the side of you that is quite cut out, or you can say cut off from your inner self, and you're thinking about the future, money making, all of those bigger things,
and
which is important.
Way, like, so at the residency, I was sent by the US. It was funded by the US State Department. They sent me for 3 months to Iowa, and there, you know, all of us used to make fun that writers always do like a job that sustains them. Because writing does not make enough money, you know? So at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the writing part is for my spirit, you know? Like it's for my sort of inner awareness, you know, where I see myself in the world, like how I interact with the world, how I interact with anyone, like even family, friends, other people, clients. And then, yes, obviously there's financial success in building a commercial club, a sports club, which obviously, you know, then pays you back in other ways. But writing is kind of solely for my heart and soul, you know. I feel so refreshed when I write or read even, you know, even when I'm reading a good book, I feel like I don't even need to, you know, interact with the world anymore.
To be honest, once I come to Paddleverse, I won't be surprised if I find like a bookshelf there.
Yeah, there has to be now, right?
You're so passionate about books, and even I am, to be honest. I have a good collection. There are still books that I haven't read completely, but then I go back to them. You know, it's like some of the books that I've read and, you know, read over time are Bertrand Russell, you know, John Baudrillard. These are the kind of philosophers that inspired me in my practice. So I think it's so satisfying to have these examples around you, as you said, that you interviewed this person, you know, and yes, we get to see their journeys online, but it's not similar to how you can sit in front of them,
of course,
and see them in person and see them in their element. Like if you see someone at an event and doing such a great talk, and you've seen their life, you've seen their life's work, that's something else entirely. That would inspire you to a level that you didn't know. Perhaps you will actually start writing. And that's why, Safina, I want you to talk about, because you have this business mindset. Talk to me about where can we bring this kind of initiative? Because to be honest, and you must remember that we talked about that even I was interested in writing and I was working on something, right? But then I had a pause for many reasons. So people who have something in their archives, right? Sitting there. Manuscripts, ideas. How do they get that motivation to just start on that?
So I get these questions a lot because it's like, oh, how do we kind of reach out? And this used to be my question when I wrote my first novel. I was like, now what do I do? I've written it, but like, where do I go from here, right? And it's a long, tiresome process of finding somebody to publish you. And then obviously I did find out about self-publishing, like we were speaking before.
Yes.
There is an option that you can kind of do it yourself, and then you promote it yourself, and you kind of look for an audience yourself. There's no harm in that either. But obviously, like as a first-time writer, you don't really know how to market a book even, right? So which is why I came up with Reverie Publishers, not for myself, because by that time I'd already found a publisher and my book was already traditionally published. But I thought about all the people who kind of cannot do that, right? Who do not have access, or who maybe are even just shy about sharing their work, So I created this platform, called Reverie Publishers, and I welcomed, people to write to me, and I would even like give them feedback on, on their manuscripts, and I would be like, okay, this needs to be done better.
Even if they're not signed with you.
Even if they were not signed with me. So
that requires a lot of energy though.
I did. And I think that like at some point it became quite a lot, even answering emails and going through people's manuscripts if I wasn't going to accept them, right? And because it was such a small like shop, I would say I only worked with freelancers. So freelance designers, freelance like printers, freelance, like I had a person who would do typesets for me, so everyone was kind of on a project basis situation.
As in your team, right?
My team, it wasn't like hired because what if I don't do...
Based on how much work you're getting, you can reach out to them.
Exactly. So, at that point, I think I realized that it's a lot of energy giving out without monetizing it at all. Like, how do I even charge for that, right? And I was kind of doing it to give back at the time. But, at some point, and then obviously, like, I took projects that I really liked. They did really well as well. There were some amazing, great books that I published, that other people were writing within Pakistan. And they did great, and I made great friendships with them, and I promoted them. And I think for a while, like that kind of served me really well. And then I think there came a point where I had 2 or 3 bad experiences as well, because I was also helping people self-publish. So then they were treating it as a product. So it was like, oh, you haven't delivered this on time. And I was just in my head about, okay, this is literature for me. Like, this is a passion. What am I not delivering? Like I didn't really understand that relationship, but I was doing it to sustain the business. That I was like, okay, enough money needs to come in so that I can support, right? Like, even if I'm not making a bit, a profit or anything, it still needs to self-sustain. I can't keep putting in my own money and then losing money there. And then, I had a few bad experiences, which is after which I thought that, okay, I think that maybe like take a little breather. And then I want to go back to it eventually, where I do selective books a year, like I publish other people's work too, but maybe 1 or 2 books a year. And I mean, the company is it's very much active.
Right.
We still, we still kind of distribute, and the books are still available and everything. But I took one step back because of all the time and energy that I was, kind of...
I think it's also the phase of life. You maybe have to take a step back, and see the bigger picture.
It was affecting my mental health a little bit as well because of those, like I think 2-3 bad projects.
I think sometimes these kind of experiences, they happen because people who are coming in, and I've seen this for publishers. I mean, I also have some publishers in my network, and having spoken to them, I've realized that sometimes people don't have the same definition of delivering the task, or same definition of what 2 people want from the same thing. Because see, perhaps there was more like a passion thing for you. You are doing it to give back.
Yes.
Right? You're giving it time. You're treating it as any kind of art that requires the time. You can't rush art.
But
they are not treating it as that way.
And you know what, Aisha, I think I made the mistake that I also did not define boundaries.
Yes.
I felt that, like I was answering and I was like becoming people's like personal assistant, or God knows what it was. But now, even with a lot more that I'm doing, But if somebody gives me a call at 9 p.m., I tell them, listen, thank you. I will speak to you tomorrow. So it gets very tough to kind of not be able to separate work and life.
Oh, yes.
And like at night now, I'm just like, okay, I need to just either read or I don't know, like watch TV or sit with my kids or whatever it is that unwinds me. But I cannot keep doing this WhatsApp and whatever situation at night. So I think thoda boundary issue bhi mujhe hua
Even
tha.
with things that we are passionate about, I think we sometimes forget that we have to put that boundary there so that the other person knows, okay, this is not doable, even if the person is so passionate and willing to help, right?
Exactly. I felt that, those boundaries were getting crossed, and I think that it wasn't giving me back as much as I was giving it, So at the end of the day, it needs to be a good balance of, if you're making a difference, then it feels good doing something, like for the publishing industry as well. As long as I was able to facilitate and I was able to publish for people and I was able to market for people and they were happy with that and they were feeling accomplished, I was feeling accomplished, right? The second it became negative, where it started being, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, I was like, wait. This is not making me any money. Like, why am I, going through this if like it's not serving me, So then I kind of took a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm going to continue my writing for sure, but let's take a little breather with the publishing and inshallah I'll get back to it when I feel that the time is right and it's the right project and I love somebody's work so much that I want to publish, them again.
But then how do you choose the niche or topics? Because I think for a publisher, and because you were an author first, I'm assuming, and then a publisher, right?
Yes.
So having this process, you've seen it. So how does one decide that these are the niche that I'm going to go with? These are the niche that I'm going to avoid.
Yeah.
These are the kind of authors that I'm going to go with. These are the kind of authors, maybe they are at a certain level in their life, doing their own thing. Maybe they're not established, they're emerging. So how do you decide on these things?
So Aisha, there's no set formula. You can get stuck with a bad egg, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? But I mean, I have gone with established authors also. And emerging and debut authors as well. And I've had great experiences with both. It's not that the established ones were more entitled or the debut ones were, not good enough or entitled or whatever. So I've had good and bad experiences, right? So there is no set sort of formula that I say that, okay, this one seems like it's not gonna like give me trouble, right? So I have to say most people I've worked with have been good people. And I've had good experiences.
Right.
So I think my instinct has been right about people. And also, it's not really just the people, it's their work. So I've interacted with their work first. I've read their work. And then if the work speaks to me and I'm like, okay, this is something out of the ordinary, then I go for it.
Right.
1 or 2 times, it even came recommended.
Okay.
That somebody said that, listen, you must read this. And then I'm like, okay, let me take out time and then I will read it. And then some work has come through, like, maybe a writer that I've published before. They've submitted something else and I'm like, okay, they've done such a good job with the first book. I'm sure that this is also going to be great. So, there are some ways that you can kind of filter. But at the end of the day, like, even the bad experiences teach you.
Yeah.
And you just need to be kind of more careful. And I kind of thought about it again and again. And I'm like, why did I choose this, right? Like, was there a red flag? Like how you think in relationships as well.
Yes.
It's
the same process.
Yeah, it's the same process. Like, do you not see the red flag before, getting somebody on as a client?
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes
it's all a learning curve anyway,
Yes. So I learned.
Yeah.
They say that, you win or you learn.
But I personally feel like there's a lot of scope in Pakistan, because that day I was just like doing this Google search of publishers and people. And to be honest, what I saw, and perhaps maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, there are people who are doing printing
Yes.
and distribution in name of publishing.
Yes.
So explain me if they are different or not, or maybe they are perhaps treated similar in Pakistan. So I want you to dissect this.
So in Pakistan, a lot of people now just print the book. They just, they find
So
a
that
printer.
is considered as publishing.
They call it publishing. We call it self-publishing.
Okay.
ठीक है, जो मतलब इंटरनेशनली टर्म यूज किया जाता है ना, वो होता है कि सेल्फ पब्लिशिंग,
Because you're paying for
which
your own
happens
printing,
through,
right?
yeah, which happens through Amazon and other big sort of companies. We find smaller printers here and we just publish the book. So that is self publishing. What is traditional publishing, you can ask? Traditional publishing is when the publisher goes through your manuscript. If they like it, they offer you an advance and a cash advance, and with that advance you are supposed to write your finish the book, or that's the first sort of, for the 500 copies, you get a certain amount, and then the publisher is responsible for the printing cost, for the distribution, placing it in bookstores, for marketing it, in whatever platforms like online, in person, book launches, whatever it is. So that all the publisher is responsible for. So you can see that in traditional publishing, a lot of that burden is handled by the publisher. And in self-publishing, everything the writer does him or herself. So the burden of that is with the writer. The proceeds, the sales, go to the publisher in traditional publishing, and in self-publishing, the proceeds go to the writer. But the writer does not have support in self-publishing. जो आप printer के पास चले गए, उसने आपकी किताब छाप दी. What then?
Yeah.
Like then you individually reach out to bookstores. Then they keep a margin. Then how do you market it?
So there is no one in currently, because we're talking about Pakistan. So there's no one in Pakistan who can, even if they're not like proper publishers, they're not helping with the distribution process. Because what I'm assuming is, even if people are having a good reach, they are good at writing, they want to do self-publication, so they are betting on their own skills.
Yes,
they're putting in the money. Basically, that's the thing. But at the end of the day, they don't know what are the bookstores.
Yeah.
They don't know the distribution process. So how do they then navigate this?
So see, research and knowledge, information is out there.
Yeah.
So a lot of what is happening now, and this is by the way international, not just in Pakistan, a lot of people who have a bit of following, they've started writing, whether they know how to write or not. Right?
With the ghostwriters.
Either with ghostwriters or even themselves. They say, oh yeah, we're not writers, but we'll do it, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is that people who follow them, they want to know what they've written. So they end up selling, quite a few books because it's relatable, because people like them, people follow them. But I mean, I'd say that it's not really literature, right? Like, you've written about your life and everything. It's like a extended blog.
Yes.
You've written, maybe you have some things that you can share. And some people may even be good at it because, I've seen some influencers and some people online, they write well. It's not that they're like bad writers or anything. But writing is also a skill that you kind of, you get a degree in as well, right? Like you can be somebody or you can learn to be somebody, but there are different levels of how you can manage that, right?
But do you think that this has more to do with traditional teaching or traditional way of education, how an author gets trained, or does this has more to do with the fact that the way the content was repurposed or put out? Because in my observation, as you mentioned, these influencers who get this reach at a certain point in the time, they decide to expand on their content.
For sure.
Whatever their identity has become online, they just expand on it.
Yes,
and they create books. Now that book can be visual, it can be visual plus text, it can be some tips, it can be listicle. Like I've seen this trend of people creating these manifestation journal.
Yeah.
Now I am someone who likes to talk about manifestation, who likes to talk about visualization a lot. But I've never thought about this thing that you're turning this into monetization.
This is so right. You are so right when you say that they're expanding. And that, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. But then don't call it fiction or all of that, right?
then if it's like, maybe then you can do one book. So in writers, we have this thing that they say there's more than one book in you. That a writer will keep writing, but anyone else who comes and, does kind of like a memoir or a manifestation book or I don't know, poetry, whatever it is, you know,
Any
whatever
use
they do,
case book.
any like, then that can only be done once, right? Unless you
So
do a
true.
series or something. So us fiction writers, we come up with a new concept every time, right? So all, by the way, due respect to anyone who wants to expand, I think go for it. I think it's excellent if you're finding more mediums to express yourself. Why not? I think you totally deserve to do that. And some of them are also very good. You know, their expression online I've seen, it's fantastic. So why not? Why not do it, right? But not all of them are great. That's what I'm saying. That, you know, like if everyone does it, like a lot of actors also write,
Yes,
right?
they
Like
do.
there's so many books that actors have also come up with now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's again ghostwriters or they've written it themselves. But again, they'll only write their biography or memoir once. They're not going to keep writing unless there is a writer in them.
Yes.
You know? So I'll actually give you Twinkle Khanna's example. So when I first, I think, read her, uski badi, you know, satire and
She
like,
has
it's
a very
funny.
satirical way of
And I think
writing.
she's really witty.
She is.
So when I heard, you know, like a while ago when I picked up her book, I was just like, okay, you know, some actor has decided to. And I really liked it, you know. I think it was
Yeah.
really lighthearted, and I think the way she did it was really funny. And I think she has a knack for it. So, and then she continued writing. I think there's more than one book that she's
There are now,
written.
yeah.
Yeah. So that worked, you know, it worked for her. But there are a lot of other people who've written, but then, you know, their work cannot be followed up by more work.
No,
you know?
because I think you pointed something great here, that if you are deciding on topics like perhaps speaking about your own life, speaking about a certain set of things that you learned, these are the things that you can just talk about once, perhaps twice
exactly,
in a
yeah.
book, right? In an actual published material, you can't really repeat stuff. I mean,
Exactly,
writers
you know,
know how
like,
they come up with new stuff, right?
I've seen writers, I mean, I've only, like, this is my, inshallah, third novel, fourth
Yeah.
book, but writers write 20, 30 books, and all of them are different ideas,
Different
different
ideas.
concepts. I don't know how they produce so fast. I mean, kudos to them, but 20, 30 novels likhe hain writers ne. Even Urdu writers, by the way. Like very famous ones I've seen, 30, 40 novels they've
They have written. They have
So
written.
so I
think
feel
in those times they had less distractions.
maybe, I don't know. No, even now I know people like you know, some authors that I read, they've written 10, 12, 14, 30, you know, 30-ish novels as well. And I mean, they're all different ideas and great novels as well. So yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're writing sort of like about your life, like you said, kitna likh lenge?
You
Ek,
can't
do,
write much.
you know, kitna, like people also get bored now. They'll be like, okay, now we know about your life.
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
now what?
And
But-
exactly this is why I think certain actors opt for this idea mid-career or someplace, you know, where they want to document what's been done. And then I think the concept is similar to how some people would then express it in the form of a documentary.
Yeah,
Documentary is
yeah.
a video. This is like
Also,
a
I
published
feel like
material.
there's also like, oh, there's a large reveal in the book. You know, I think this happened. I don't know which actor it was, that they're like, oh, they spoke about their, you know, stint with drug abuse or something. So that's the selling point of the book, that, oh, there's a grand reveal in it. But it's
Sometimes
gonna happen
gossip can be
once.
turned into
exactly,
a
but it's gonna
book.
happen once, right?
Yes.
How many times are you going to reveal that,
No,
right?
you can't.
So yeah, like if you want to expand into other mediums, I think that, you know, as a content creator, as a writer, as a person who thinks that they can communicate thoughts in a manner that reaches people, sure, why not?
Which makes me curious that because we're living in these times, as you said, knowledge is quite accessible and it's out there, right? And then, of course, I don't want to mention, but everyone knows about AI. I mean, it creates on a click.
Of course.
So speak to me about where we are heading. As someone who is fond of writing, and I'm speaking from a very, traditional writing, sensibility. I don't want an answer, based on the fact that, okay, yes, I mean, we do write, we can also create. I want you to comment and perhaps criticize this idea. Like, what's the role of traditional writing versus where we are heading with this quick content production?
So I thought about this a lot, actually, you know, when ChatGPT was probably launched, you know, and I thought that, okay, like, would writers become redundant? Because now, you know, like, even if you need to write an essay, you can just give a prompt and it'll just give you the entire essay, right?
Yes.
But you need to understand that AI has only the information, and that might be a lot of information, but it only has information that has been fed into it. So think all the inventions of the world. How did people invent things? With ideas,
But
right?
we are talking about hardcore inventions, right? And I agree, because if we talk about inventions, that then human essence, then actual writers, actual artists are important.
Of
But
course.
let's say for a second we assume that someone who is going to a library or a bookstore just to get a good read, right? They don't care about the author.
Of course.
They haven't connected. Perhaps this person is going to a bookstore to buy for the sake of buying because that person has the money. They want to invest and buy a good read, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, do you think then that defeats the purpose? Then this person would think that, okay, I should perhaps write a story that I want to read. Do you think there will be time, or are we heading towards that time where this is going to become quite common? Or do you think, no, this can never substitute the fact that a real person with a real background is writing it?
So there's this, I guess, dichotomy to your question as well.
Yes.
There are two sides to it as well, where one side, I feel like, yes, AI can give you anything. It can give you any story you want to read. You write a prompt, I would like to read a story with this. But what if you don't know what you want to read? Then what do you ask? So when I go to a bookstore, I don't always go with an agenda. I go there and I'm like, what do I want to read? Like if I go to a restaurant and, I'm like, recommend me something. What do I want to eat? Sometimes we don't know what will kind of attract our interest. So a bookstore makes me kind of like open possibilities, right? I can also ask ChatGPT, I am in the mood of reading commercial fiction, this, that. So that can also happen. But at the same time, a real person is coming up with real stories that AI has not experienced. So the raw emotion, I feel, a person can bring. A lot of things AI can do. A lot of things. And I think that like, I'm also scared that what if like the human brain becomes redundant, that like you're not thinking and applying yourself anymore because everything is available, right?
I mean, we get that glimpse into dystopian kind of visions.
Exactly,
Perhaps there will be a time that we will be recycling ideas so much that there is
no
nothing
new
to
ideas will come, right?
This.
So sorry, I'm cutting you. If you search, write me a book like Harry Potter in Pakistan, it will give you a book like Harry Potter in Pakistan. But before J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, was there a book like Harry Potter? No, right? That idea came from somewhere. So now you can emulate that. You can, like you said, recycle it. Harry Potter based in Pakistan, Harry Potter based in Japan. You can do that. But what about new ideas? So new ideas come from people.
But don't you think the new ideas, they are going to still be there because there's so many exceptional writers who are going to write because they want to contribute to the idea of writing?
Of course, yes.
But at the same time, don't you think because this AI has become so accessible, we all use it? I mean, not even if we're not even using for like actual content, we're using it for grammar correction or this or that, just to ease our lives, right? Do you think that these ideas which are original are getting lost somewhere? Or is there no harm? Like they can coexist?
I don't think, they can coexist. I think they will coexist. I don't think that they will get lost. I do think that perhaps, as many writers as we would have produced otherwise, they would just be like, okay, so this is already available, right? So thoda sa to obviously jab machines aayi, to factory workers kam ho gaye na, so obviously like that will be replaced. But I don't think it will be replaced completely because we still need, great philosophers to give their ideas. We still need great fiction to come out.
But what if the actual philosophers, people who have like actually learned things, they have seen life in a certain domain, they have understood life before actually sitting down and thinking, okay, I'm going to write a book on this, right? These people, they are going to say their thing. But then there are people who are going to act the same way in front of the audience, right? They are going to appear in front of the conferences, in front of press, and they're going to say these recycled thoughts, because just because AI is helping them create and become a puppet for it to be able to say their words. Again, with
True,
such,
and you can't
I think
stop
this is
right?
what I'm
Yes,
so
you
scared
can't
about.
really stop that. And the thing is that my concern is that yes, there are a lot of I think ways in which you can tell if it's if AI is being used. So my son is in grade 7, and he's given instructions in where you can use AI. So it says okay, you can use ChatGPT in this, but you can't use in this. So don't use it to create a peel paragraph. Don't use it to create, analysis of this, but you can use it to gather information. So you need to learn how to use AI as well, because if, God forbid, you don't know how to do an analysis, how will you do that analysis in your mind? Your mind needs to work.
Yes.
So I think that all of this conversation, we need to learn to use it in the correct manner. We can't discard it. Oh, AI is taking over our lives, our jobs, our livelihood.
This conversation is not that important.
That is not the conversation we should be having. The conversation we should be having is that how do we use it to better our lives? It is so convenient. Like now, if I need to even make a contract, I can just be like, ChatGPT, like, I want this contract between 2 parties, and like, it'll give you a contract. So obviously, ease of convenience. Does that mean that lawyers don't need to get a degree anymore? No, because there are still issues that are so technical that will need to be argued and debated in court according to the law and stuff. But basic stuff, it'll give you, more kind of, what do you call it? I don't want to say elite, but more complicated thoughts will come out of the human mind. But basic stuff you can recycle, reuse, get easily, correct grammar, create a paragraph, that can
These
be
are
done
the
by
use cases
AI.
that brings efficiency. So as long as it does that,
It brings efficiency.
so we get more time to do what we love. So why not?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that what you said makes sense. And I want to now come back to your both roles, simultaneously, and just want to understand that because you were a writer first and then you went into publishing business, which eventually now helped you into your other business. But then writing, did that make you a more empathetic, you can say, publisher? Because publishers can be harsh, not so much in Pakistan because there's not a scope. But I want you to talk about this relation, and then again, vice versa. Being a publisher, does that bring you more ideas to how a publisher would read your writing? Because these are two different perspectives on how you see the other person. So speak to me about this relation.
Yes. So I feel that when you're on one side of the, of the table, you understand the person, you empathize with that person's troubles even more. So being a writer, the troubles that I had, the challenges of being published, I tried to overcome those in my role as a publisher.
Right.
I was like, okay, easy access, okay, response time, okay, this, that. Like I tried to do ticks. And I was like, okay, what kind of support did I not receive from my publisher? Should I help in, maintaining that? But again, like I told you that, like between all those ticks, I basically had no boundaries, then I became so much that I wanted to kind of cover for, the support that I wanted as a writer, that I gave too much support, and then that cost me as well. So empathy, definitely. But I think that, like, again, there just needs to be a balance everywhere. Like, yes, empathize, but then if you're running a business, then you need to also understand that it needs to make you something. It needs to be worth your time, and it needs to run as a business. You can't keep calling it like a passion project and spend all kinds of hours in it and it doesn't pay you back, because at the end of the day, you've spent on your education, your time is worth something, right? A lot of people, like you said, like, did you give feedback for free and stuff? Yes, I did. But then at the end of the day, sometimes when I said that, okay, like, this is going to be the fee for it, it was like, oh, but why? And you're like, because I acquired an education for it, you know, and now I'm imparting that knowledge and I'm using my time and effort, and it's worth a certain amount of money, and there's no shame in that.
There's no shame,
you know. And it just felt like, oh my God, am I overcharging? No, I'm not, because I've learned something that, you know, now I'm using, and it's a service.
as long as it's bringing value to the other person, that should be fine. And also I want to, you know, move a bit back from all these traditional ways of publishing for a second, because I mean, we talked about fiction, non-fiction, and all the genres that you are also interested in publishing. You know, at some point in your time, you'll go back and you'll start supporting people. But I really want to understand, like, what is the current landscape of Pakistan when we think about non-linear ways of publication, not just the linear ones, because we know that, okay, if it's a novel, then it has to be 100 pages above. I don't know what the criteria is. And then if it's a educational book, then it has to be a certain way. But then, because I've been thinking the same question for the other forms of content as well. Like, this question remains same. So that's why I'm asking you as well. I've been thinking about this for books. I've been thinking about this for videos, for any form of art. So how do we bring more experimental take on publishing?
Yeah.
On non-linear publishing and literal publishing, like any kind of journal. I mean, it doesn't have to be a book, right? So speak to me about the scope of that. Are people interested? Should people still do it? I mean, I love zines and small booklets that can give you quick information on something, or whether it's like a small section of poetry that someone actually thought to not convert to a big book, but it was just like a tiny idea that you wanted to convert into a sweet little publication with some visuals. I mean, these are some of the ideas that I have.
For sure. I think that, like, what you're talking about, a lot of that is also happening in Pakistan, by the way. I have a good friend called Mina Malik. She runs a publishing platform with Hassan Tahir. And they're great, honestly. Like, they do these zines, they do, you know, poetry books, they do mini books. I also published a friend's work that was also a collection of, you know, stories. So it was a super thin book, like, no, kind of, you said, you know, ki kitne 100 pages hone
experimental
chahiye,
take, you know, any new
it
idea.
was just a collection of stories and poems, actually. So people do these experiments for sure. But saying that, I feel that it is an era of content, and I know that there's a lot of trash content out there that gets so much attention, and I think that's like literally brain rot. You know, it's like, what are you even selling, or what are you even, you know, like, people have millions of followers, and when you go on their profiles, you're like, oh my God, like, what intelligent person will interact with this content, right? So, and there are some, by the way, pages that I also follow. Some have, you know, like, it's quote of the day. And then there's this Indian writer, actually, who talks about the conflict in Gaza and Israel. So he's very knowledgeable, and he's kind of against the tide. So there's a lot of hate on his page as well, but he's very, very knowledgeable. So I see a lot of his content when he's talking about this conflict. And even like Pakistan and neighboring country, and, you know, like, all of that. So it's
just
really
to find that voice,
it's really interesting to sort of, you know, see and hear his content, because he's a very intelligent person. So now, if he'd written a book, it would only be, if I find a book on his, you know, in a bookshop, where is it available? Is it even available in Pakistan? But because he runs a page and he talks very intelligently on that page, I feel like that's a great, you know, sort of interaction or way to impart information. So there are a lot of that type of, you know, people who are doing, and even, by the way, podcasts like you're doing.
Yes.
You know, you're probably calling a lot of people who have a lot of, you know,
insights
and a lot of information to impart and knowledge to impart, and whoever's watching this, maybe they can learn a thing or two from those people, right?
Absolutely.
So there are many forms of, I think that, you can have booklets, which is kind of traditional, but not novel form. And they're also kind of nice to pick up. You know, you don't want to commit to a whole novel.
Exactly.
You read a short story.
You like
read
a quick
piece.
idea. you get a piece of that artist or thinker
Absolutely.
or writer
Absolutely.
or author.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, a collection of short stories, but also I feel like, yeah, like you said, experimental, right? So it makes you pause. You know, good content should make you pause, and it
Yes.
should make you think. I
True.
don't believe in this fazool, you know, like
Yeah.
whatever
Trendy stuff.
trendy stuff that, you know, is happening around. ठीक है, cute, like I don't
Yeah.
know, some people have family pages and they do cute things with their families and stuff. That's also nice. It's cute to see.
Yeah.
Some people's content is funny, and I think somebody, you know, like doing something making a person laugh, good enough, you know.
Yeah.
Like I think it's a moment of pleasure that you're giving somebody else. So it can be different kinds of content, but yes, maybe there's poetry, you know, there's some form of debate that you're doing online. Maybe there's a good quote that you want to kind of say, you know, on a platform. So there are many ways to, I think, communicate with an audience. And then there are blogs.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I was a big fan of somebody who was writing these not daily blogs, but I think weekly blogs. And they had a very good, like, sense of...
Which is less, by the way. No, most of the blogs
like
are
one
quite...
page, 2 pages, you know, but it really made you feel connected, you know? And what are we if we're not looking for connection?
Oh, yes.
You know, I think that, like, art and any form of content that you interact with in, you know, in any kind of art, it makes you feel connected. It makes you kind of like
relatable
feel,
content in
yes,
any form.
you know,
I
and then
think
you
that
should
would
just
speak to
feel
you.
something inside, right? Like that stir that your soul is searching for. That
right.
should happen. Whether it's, you know, in media form, but whatever medium it is in, I think that it's important that it speaks to you.
And, you know, I am personally a lover of old books, old philosophers still. I mean, I would still go back to those. For some reason, I get this more authentic, you know, aura regarding certain ideas, because I feel like those were more original. I don't know how to say it, because nothing is original, right? Everything is a
course.
copy of a copy. But speak to me about your, you know, favorite vintage books, vintage writers, authors, and as a publisher, if you would like that content to be repurposed in any way, in your own publication, adapted, I don't know, made reference to, or maybe perhaps you would want to see that work come again because it's relatable today. I mean, I just want your comments.
I don't know. So I think I would have an unpopular opinion on
Okay.
it, because, you know, the classics and everything we read, we enjoyed. I feel like this is like at this time, there's a lot happening even in terms of, you know, commercial and literary fiction. I read a lot of commercial fiction, and then I read a lot of prize winners. So they're completely distinctive. I would say that, you know, the prize winners are very thought-provoking and somewhat dark also. You know, the content that you kind of that wins the prizes, they're out of the box, they're experimental, and commercial fiction is kind of feel good, you know.
Yeah.
It's fast moving. So I don't know if I would readapt classics. I don't think that's my palette. But I do think that I do like experimental stuff. So I really have enjoyed, you know, some kind of dystopian, you know, humorous take on things.
For example, like recently what I actually started doing was, because I knew that AI is not going to go away anytime soon. And I've been listening to certain people. And what the question that I had in my mind was that if this person that I'm reading so much about, this person is from another era, if this person was alive today, right, how would their philosophies, again, because I'm speaking from a very different niche genre, so how would their philosophies would be relevant, or whether they're not relevant? And if they're relevant, then in what ways? So I started creating a podcast on that, you know, just debating on these ideas that if I know certain philosophies and I'm trying to make a link, given the dark side of tech today, dark side of deepfakes, AI, all of these things that are happening.
Yeah.
Not to say that they don't have their positive side, but I was just looking at their dark sides and then trying to link it back to different theories, different philosophy. For example, how human behavior is being affected, the idea of senses, and how we as human beings experience the reality through senses. Plato, you know, all these people coming in. And this is just one idea, right? This is just one idea how you're relating the past content which is already done. No one remembers. It's in the archives. Yeah?
Yes.
And although I understand your point that contemporary content is so relatable, like Gen Z is going to pick a book that is in their language with
Of
all
course,
these words.
I don't even understand their books, you know.
So I get your point, but what I'm just wondering is that whether there should be more projects or not that should bring the old knowledge that is dying because it was in books. And now we have audiobooks. Some books are in
but also
audiobooks.
adaptations, by the way, that's a big thing these days. A lot of like shows and series are being done as adaptations of books, right? So yes, a script is also done, but it's based on a book. So a lot of good stories are still coming through the books. But I think appreciate your question in kind of repurposing the big, the giant thinkers. How do we bring their knowledge to current times?
Because then today's generation is not reading that. That's my only concern. And I'm grateful, to be honest, for all the period dramas that we see. I mean, they're all adapted from that content, right?
Of course.
And I'm so grateful. I always love seeing a historical drama, historical documentary, or maybe that's just me.
I think that, okay, so Gen Z definitely has a different palette than us millennials. Like,
Yes.
I feel that, I still want to work through things. I need to, like, in my head, it's like work hard, so you earn something. And with Gen Zs and even Gen Alphas, it's like, okay, give it to me as it is, and then I will decide if I need to work on it or not.
They like choices.
Exactly, and they like it easy. They want like even content that comes out. जो अभी मैं देखती हूँ some commercial fiction books that also come out. They're such easy reads that it's literally like, it's like, what is even the story? Like, what is there a message in it? What did I just read? So there's a lot of that content as well. But yes, I think as a writer, as somebody who has interest in some great philosophy, I think people bring in that in their work as well. So it depends. Like, maybe when you write a book, you will have some kind of influence in it, and you can bring that about in terms of what interests you and what has influenced your writing and your work.
Which brings me to my most favorite topic now, which is self-publishing. Now, I want you to speak about this hassle related to self-publishing and how important is it that before publishing a book, someone like me who's considering a book is in the archive, something that I've been writing since forever before AI came, and now I've been like comparing my writing to what AI is writing. I've had those times.
Of course. But listen, this is just self-doubt, that you've had. I think that it's just, you need to not do the comparison.
But one can't help, right? Because I know for sure that even if I write it out, let's say someone who doesn't know that, I've been writing, I've been interested in thoughts, I've been reading a lot. They might just say, oh, maybe she has written an AI book,
No, so there are ways to do it, na?
Yeah.
Like, if you submit it somewhere, they will probably run it
AI
through
check.
a software where they'll be like, okay, has this been written before, So I think that, yes, it seems like copying is very easy, but I don't think that a traditional publisher will never publish something that has been generated
Obviously,
by
because
AI,
then it's,
right?
they are under question.
Yeah, of course. But yes, maybe you can self-publish it. And there are a lot of cheaters who will do that.
But
right?
then speak to me. Then if this is the thing, because obviously we're talking about someone who's trying to launch, not just me, someone who's trying to launch their career as a publisher, even as a side career, right? If they're doing something else, they want to write, and they don't want to perhaps go through this entire hassle of finding the right publisher, someone who trusts their vision, all of that.
Yeah.
Then what does this person do? Do they just take a leap and write something and format it themselves, do the editing and just put it out based on their own engagement? Or should they go the traditional route and find the best publisher?
I mean, I am a big proponent of traditional publishing because it's like handing people who know what they're doing to them. You can do anything yourself. आप हो सकता है कल को you want to build a table, आप furniture भी बना सकते हैं.
Yeah, you can.
ठीक है? But you go to a carpenter who knows how to do things to do it for you, right? Again, there are many things you can do yourself.
But then don't you think this will bring your writing to question? Like, people would ask if it's a self-published book.
And it does bring it to question.
Yes, whether it's written by you.
Of course, it does bring into question because We don't know what kind of editor was on board. Maybe you
Yes.
didn't edit it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's full of mistakes, right? So you never know. With self-publishing, yes, you can hire an editor, you can still make it as good as a traditionally published book, but you can also not, because there's no checks and controls, right?
Then what is the role of publisher beyond the process of editing and distribution, especially in Pakistan?
Marketing.
Marketing.
Yeah, you
And-
kind of create an author, right?
Hmm.
Like you do enough for them, you kind of build this presence online, in person. I'll just give you a little bit of background. I didn't do a lot, honestly,
Hmm.
because doing a lot requires a lot of funds, right? Like doing a lot would be to organize 6 book launches all over
Oh,
Pakistan,
yes.
right? But I did organize intercity book launches. So
Hmm.
I would take my authors to, if it was an author from Karachi, I would pay for the ticket and I would take them to Lahore, and then I would organize a book launch in Lahore. Then I would also partner with a bookstore in Lahore and then in Islamabad and place their books there, apart from the Karachi, like, Liberty Books or whatever. So I did that, right? Then I would even sometimes fly with them. I would make them meet the community of writers, and I would connect them to other people who were doing these book blogging and book interviews and stuff. I even actually partnered with somebody who was making these really cool videos.
Hmm.
So they were interviewing the writer, but at the same time they were doing like a lifestyle thing. So I kind of partnered, and obviously anyone who puts an effort charges money,
It
right?
does.
So I was putting in a lot of effort that way as well. And then
Hmm.
I tried connecting them to festivals. जो ये festivals होते हैं सारे literature festivals, उनमें if they can get a spot, I did book signings for them. I did multiple book sessions where they would interact with readers. I would organize either at a cafe or a bookstore. So there's a lot that the publisher can do, and I did to some extent do it. I also connected some writers who the British Council approved, and then we did their sessions there. So if tomorrow, like, somebody comes and they reach out to the British Council, okay, can I have an event there? They'll say no,
Hmm.
you can't, because who
They
are
have their
you?
own check
You
and
know?
balance for
So
everything.
because I built a relationship with them, then when I would recommend somebody, they would be like, okay,
Hmm.
okay, yes, we'll do it. So there was a book we did about the Zeenat Haroon Prize. It was a collection of short stories. This lovely lady, Saira, she runs the Zeenat Haroon Foundation. So, and it's a prize that's been running for many, many years. And I think, like, it's a fantastic thing because it's a short story prize
Yeah.
for Pakistani writers. So 1 year it's fiction, 1 year it's non-fiction. She reached out to me, Saira Vaidi, and she said, I want to publish a collection. And I said, okay, very well. And then we gave writers, their kind of, what do you call it, reimbursement, for kind of giving their story for us to publish. We formed it, we put it in a book form. Then we called some of the writers to British Council. And then we did an event, where people interacted with them. They had their little celebrity moment because they had only done one short
Oh,
story,
yes.
right? So they interacted with people, they signed copies. Like, it was one big thing, right? It wasn't a lot, but it was something.
But it meant a lot for those people.
Of
yeah?
course it did. Of course. And they're brilliant writers. Like, it wasn't that they weren't good writers. It was just that they'd not written a novel. They'd written one short story that had kind of, grabbed attention. So yeah, that's the kind of work that publishers do.
Hmm.
And then they help in book cover design. They give feedback. They make sure the edits are run along smoothly. There's a way to do things. And the publisher generally knows what way it is.
I think self-publishing is very good if certain point of your career you understand publishing through a traditional publisher.
Yes,
And
of
then you
course.
want to expand on your own book writing, and then because it's a content creation, right? Then you're putting content out, but then it's going through a legitimate means.
Yeah.
I think this is the only barrier with
Yeah.
book writing. But otherwise, like you said, self-publishing is available. If anyone wants to express themselves, they should. They should not just think that this is not good enough and it should just sit there because we can't find a publisher. You're right about those things. And I think this is why it's again important, circling back, that you are an entrepreneur. You have this these different things happening in your life that we can be grateful for, that if one is not happening, we can fall back to the other. And I think this is a true treasure. And my last question, Safina, to you is, you can give your thoughts on that, is what is one book, if you had your life's work in one book, what would that book be about?
Is that one book I am going to write?
Yes, you have to know.
Oh, there can't be. I don't think there can be.
If there was one.
So I feel like I'm pretty sure, Aisha, you also feel the same, that you are not one person. There are many versions of you.
So you can give 3 to 4.
Okay. One book that I would like to write. Let's do that.
Or a topic, perhaps. You don't want to reveal the idea.
Okay, let's do 2, 3.
Okay.
So some things that I want to kind of explore. I want to explore a sports book because, I've lived that life, right?
I think this is the right time for that.
Yes, because I've been, I've been part of a team.
Yes.
I've been, I've had a partner who I consistently played with. I won tournaments with her. I ran, I run a sports club. So I think that like once you've interacted and experienced something, it really becomes, I wouldn't say easy, but it really helps in your writing journey because you've stepped in those shoes. You know exactly how that person is feeling. So I think at this point, the one book that I would want to write is a sports book.
Okay. So we came down to one.
We did. I was gonna float some more ideas, but I was like, why should I give people ideas, What if like tomorrow I see like, oh, this book is happening. I saw it for your podcast that,
But this book I really want to see because now having understood your entrepreneurial side more, and I think there is still more depth. We just scratched the surface.
Of course. I think there needs to be like 3 follow-up sessions because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that we touched on all these different things, and perhaps next time we can delve more into
of course
one domain, whatever you are doing.
There's too many scattered thoughts. I feel like
but see, anyone who is starting their journey, I think this is like a treasure for them because they won't feel alone. And this is why I appreciate women who come on my podcast more, because we don't have many examples for women. We have more for men because they're doing 10 different things.
Of course.
Not so many for women. So I appreciate this a lot.
Thank
and Safina,
you so
you
much.
coming in, sharing your story. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.